Wow.
Got this the timer, man. All right, we're back. Episode 3. A man who needs no introduction. The MC ride of physics. Terence of the Eigenbros. I'm gonna start calling you MC riding a frictionless pulley.
I love it.
So
Continue.
for the audience, I guess like there's a large audience of now Eigenbros fans who are interested probably in a lot of the stuff that you do, and probably just how you guys made the show, because I feel like back when I started watching the show, it was a lot less viewers, and then I think you got like it seemed like you got viewers over a couple videos like that randomly where they would be big
Yeah.
view counts. So like I guess I talked about this with Juan a little bit, but like you know how would you describe the early episodes of the show, and like what was going on between you guys when you were making them?
Damn, man, I love the early episodes because it was like I knew that would be the most fun time of it.
Yeah.
We've still managed to keep it really fun because me and Juan still have kind of kept that kind of fast and loose feel, which I think is how you keep things genuine and interesting. But the first episodes, we really didn't give a damn at all. We were just doing it straight up for ourselves. We're still kind of doing that, but as you grow and you have an audience, you have to kind of be more professional. Have things come out on time. Tighten up the graphics a little bit, make nice little cute thumbnails and whatnot. So it's gotten more of a rigorous kind of system we have put into place. But that's good because we've gotten our schedule down and everything. But the early days, it was just fun, man. I mean, I got a stupid, knockoff like Chinese camera from eBay. I
World's
bought like two of them for like $30 a piece. I remember
world's
there,
worst
there
camera
was,
quality.
oh yeah, absolutely, and I loved it every second of it. It was like like the old days when rappers would have their real crap videos of like, yeah, this is our early days, and yeah, man, I would just scout out on eBay like during class, during stat mech, I would look at cameras before class,
Yo,
see how cheap I could actually get it cameras, and I would just be buying cameras. I probably bought during that time about 12 different cameras, and
Jesus
they were
Christ.
all like under $30. And that was just me figuring it out, trying to see what the best camera quality could be for as cheap as possible. Trying to use my Pareto principle there, and and eventually, I landed on these little Kamiri cameras, and because it was funny because the people on eBay, kind of an aside, but the people on eBay would sell these cameras. There was an HD version, and then there was a bad like 720 version,
Yeah.
and the HD version versus the 720p version, they looked almost identical. So when people would look up prices on eBay to sell the HD versions, they would look accidentally sometimes at the worst quality ones and sell them for the same price.
Yo.
So I actually got the HD version of the shitty camera for cheap. So it was worth probably about $30 more. That's double the price, and I would get those for $30. So I bought two of those, and I eventually got good at finding those HD ones. And I kind of maximized the amount of shitty quality. I maximized the amount of quality we could get out of those shitty cameras just by scouting out eBay every day for like a good month or two.
The grand maximizer. No, this is like you have a skill at this. It's like constant, never ending analysis of like how to maximize for minimal effort. Like I
Bro,
I wish I had that skill.
that's one thing I always try to do. I say, how can I do this for free? That's the number one question I ask myself for almost everything first. The computers in my house I have for free. I have two computers in my house I got for free. And that was just from going on campus and asking the computer science, or no, the surplus people. So the surplus is
Oh,
a place where they get rid of a bunch of the electronics and old electronics at schools. And I actually asked them when their next cycle of when they're getting rid of. a bunch of computers was, and then they told me, and I just picked up like I had my choice, my pick of the litter of like 20 different PCs that they were getting rid of basically, and I just told them I was using them for graduate research, quote unquote.
Yo, no,
And I got two free computers.
this is this is amazing. Like my old advisor when I was at Oklahoma State, she got things from surplus, but one, she paid for them, and
Ah, no, we don't pay.
yeah, you got that, you got it for free with no
Yeah.
like account or anything. Like she would do it
Nope.
probably formally. This is amazing. See, have you always been this way? Like, have you always, were you like one of those kids who allegedly would steal in school, or like did you,
You mean like steal stuff from school?
yeah, or just yeah, maybe steal stuff from school, steal stuff like just in general, or
No, see, I like the challenge of trying to do it the most legit way as possible. If anything, if anything, I would do it would be like trying to just circumnavigate the system somehow. I just
yeah,
like the challenge of trying to pay for as little as possible and getting the biggest return. It's like, yeah, it's an optimization problem, right? I just want the biggest bang for my buck, and it's something that it's something I've really come into a lot better as I've gotten older. I don't know if I necessarily focused on that as much as a kid. I was more of just obtaining a bunch of knowledge. But when I started, getting more of an entrepreneurial bent, you know, undergraduate slash graduate school, I started really focusing on trying to apply that to, that principle to many things, just that optimization. Because I feel like as an entrepreneur, you have to try to be creative. Like being creative is a big part of success in the beginning days of entrepreneurship, I think, because things get less fun and interesting when you have a bunch of money, right? It's just easy at
yeah,
that point because you just buy whatever you need, and the more you can save, now in the beginning, the more you can actually do, and the quicker you can, progress and grow in that sense. I think if you kind of have that mindset of trying to get as much as you possibly can for giving as little as you can. That sounds kind of bad, but I'm,
no, no, it's I
but
mean,
you know what I mean.
yeah, I think it sounds bad, but it's actually I think it's really useful.
Yeah,
It
and I've done that with a lot of things now, and I'm just trying to always do that now. It's a thing that it's constantly in my mind.
yeah, because I think I think it's true, at least from the entrepreneur side, which I have no qualifications to talk about, but here we go. I'm going to talk about it anyway.
Do it.
Is that it seems as though being successful at a company that has a lot of capital, or like a large like financial backing, is not nearly as difficult, because the early days of a company are where all the risky like
Hmm.
decisions are made, where you have to kind of like, one, choose like what direction you're going to put your little capital into, and then two, make the most of it. Whereas you reach a critical mass and you can sort of just like make incremental uh bent or just improvements, and then make, and the
Yeah.
return on that is so much greater. Like, I mean, I'm thinking like in my head right now, I'm thinking about Apple, and I'm thinking like early
Right.
days of Apple, or like these like crazy innovations
Hmm.
for honestly not that much profit, whereas like now they make a new iPhone, right? Like change
Right.
one thing on it, and it's like it can't fail.
Yeah, it's lazy now,
Yeah,
and that's one thing that I think you have to be aware of as you grow your business, and you start off as an innovator, because it's so easy to get caught into just coasting. And I think a lot of times, your restrictions actually can make you more creative.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I love that now. When I find things, I try to restrict myself, and that's kind of this process of me doing these kind of things, like with the cameras and whatnot. I am kind of doing that on purpose, right? Because I could easily afford some of these cameras. I could afford the $70 camera, but
Yeah,
that's not really the point. It's about trying to use your creativity and working within your limitations, and actually the product is better a lot of times, in my opinion.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I've sort of I've sort of started to become interested in a lot of these, not even for myself, but just interested in people who are doing science who happen to also be interested in like entrepreneurship. Sort of
Hmm.
like the main people who I like hear a lot about it is, we were talking about him earlier, but like Lex Friedman has like probably for the last year and a half been edging
Right.
on his podcast about how he's going to start a business of some sort. And
Hmm.
I what's been interesting to me is like, I guess I had this mind or this thought that like when people wanted to start a business, they just started it right then, like right in that moment. And now I'm starting to see
Ah,
that the people have like years of just sitting on an idea and trying to build it
yeah.
before they develop it. Do you like have any like thoughts or insights about that? It's because like it's very similar for you. Like you're interested in trying to
Yeah.
build your own business and
So
stuff.
I have to admit, for a little bit, for me, it's a little bit of insecurity.
Hmm.
So it's the fact that I don't have, I don't have the, I don't think I am a natural hustler, let's just say.
Yeah.
I do think I am a nerd first. I am definitely a thinker first, not a doer. Um, but I do have this weird combination where I do want to be a doer in some sense, and I do strive for that, and I do have that in my mind. Um, Whereas some people who I've known who really are doers and that kind of are the real archetypal business people, they I
Hmm.
think are more inclined to be like you're saying, that first example of they just go out and do the business, right? But for me, I don't have that kind of drive to always just be going out there and just banging my head on a rock, despite anything. It's not my natural inclination. So, and I think Lex Friedman's probably similar.
Yeah, I would have.
Um,
As you're describing this, I'm like, surely this dude, there's no way. I mean, I think it might be true a lot for a lot of people who are involved in science or engineering or computer science who then are also interested in like some sort of business venture, that they kind of have a more, I don't want to say like, I'm not trying to use this in a
Pejorative.
yeah, pejorative sense, but
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they have a more like archetypally rigorous way of wanting to do anything. Like you want to have
Right,
all your T's crossed and your I's dotted before you start anything. And
right.
but in a way, I think it's actually almost like impressive when people go against that natural, because I think that's where
Hmm.
you can become very very useful when you are naturally somebody who wants to be like acquisition minded and wanting to learn more,
Hmm.
and then but you can still somehow force yourself out of that natural tendency into the doing aspect of something. Because
Right.
I think a lot of the like joke of the like typical trope and joke about a lot of business people, which also holds true for why a lot of businesses fails, like a lot of people don't even think, they're just like, I want to start a business.
Yeah.
Like about what though? Like
Exactly. Like you have to like know what you're doing. Of course, some people can turn nothing into something, though. I've known people who really are just natural hustlers, where they're just
yeah.
so good at moving and they move quickly, that they can turn nothing into something. Like there's just people that are out there like that, but that's
I
not my archetype.
mhm. I
So for me, it's just like you're saying. It's a very much forced process, and I kind of have a mindset where I'm always constantly reminding myself to do these things. It's not a natural thing, 'cause my natural state is to constantly analyze a situation, find and collect more data. But you have to always realize at the end of the day that there will always be more data. You have to just do. So you have to set goals. You have to commit to them. Consistency is very critical. If you're not consistent, then really that's like one of the number one things in my opinion. Consistency is everything. That's why for me, with the podcast, I wanted to make sure we're always going to get a podcast out every week. We kind of messed that up in these last couple of weeks, but every now and then you might skip one,
No,
but
but you had consistently for like tens of weeks. Like
yeah, we that is a very important aspect of business to me. It's like when people want products and when people want content or whatever, they don't want to be on your schedule. Like you have
yeah.
to remember that the audience and whoever the service you're providing, like the customer is king. Like you should always be giving the best product to your customer and always giving consistent product. Like people want to be able to have reliability, and that's why great business people are oftentimes boring.
Yeah.
Because they're very predictable. But that's a great personality disposition for consistency. Like
Yeah.
consistency is everything in business, in my opinion.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, I know that my personality is the exact opposite of being successful in any business. Like even amongst even for a scientist, like I am just overly like I am just I have a this like inner hatred. Like, yeah, to the point where it's almost hatred. I have this inner hatred of doing anything without having what I feel is perfect information about it, and I know I won't,
Right.
but I just keep going. Like I
Yeah.
will read like 40. I think my first term at Caltech, I think I read something like 40, 50 papers because I didn't want to start any research. I still don't even feel right starting research because I'm like,
100%.
I don't know enough about this to be talking about it when I haven't
Right.
read everything about it yet.
And you know
I'm
so much. You know so much, actually. You could probably do a whole presentation on it right now.
It's
And that's
fun.
the thing that I think that scientists have to unstick themselves from, is because, we are that personality disposition. I'm that personality disposition. And it's only after this unnatural kind of uh, uh, forcing yourself out of that's the only way to overcome it, because you always want more information.
Yeah.
You'll never be satisfied.
Yeah, and it leads to me being like unbelievably inconsistent and like doing in the doing at like I'm consistent in the I will consistently take time to learn about things,
Yes,
but
yes.
and even when it comes to doing something creative like YouTube, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna put out a video unless I actually have a spark of
Right,
inspiration. I'm like, I'm not just gonna
right,
put
right,
something out every week. That's disgusting.
right. And
But
look what ours was like. When we put out things every week, sometimes it'd be like you mentioned, halfway through the podcast, the video will drop out.
yeah.
But that was me just saying, like, I don't care if it sucks.
Yeah.
It has to just come out. Like, to me, that is the number one thing. Like, it doesn't matter if it sucks; it's always going to suck. Like, even if it was all the way through, it probably would have still only had 23 views anyway. So it's really just about the operation of doing that process. And eventually you'll get good. And eventually you get so used to doing these things that it will just be better constantly.
It's so you're I mean it's completely true. Like somehow I am aware of this and will still like internally
Yes.
not be able to believe it because like
I get it.
I watched your guys' videos when it was like 20 views and clearly it was like no one's
Right.
watching these. So it's like it doesn't
Right.
and it's like even if the video cut out randomly, like it was honestly just funny to me. Like
Right.
more than like it was because like I didn't think it was gonna be good quality anyway. Like I didn't think it was gonna be high
Exactly.
production. It was like the enjoyment was like the fast and looseness of it, and it was like
Right.
oh, and in my head I'm like this will get better eventually, and of course it does. Like
Exactly.
it gets better just by you doing it over and over again.
Right. And
And
it's funny now. Like, we can talk about that and laugh at how bad it was.
yeah, it
So there's
is. It was
almost like a romantic part about, that shitty quality in the beginning. It's fun. It's funny.
it is. There were like it was almost fitting too because like even the content you guys talked about back then like there would be a lot of episodes about aliens like a lot
Right.
like it was it fit more like it was like the homegrown kind of energy of just like for a lack of
Yeah,
a better word like
man.
almost like bullshit topics like instead of
Right.
like really research topics it was just
Yep.
kind of bullshit.
And that's the beauty of it, man. I love that style, honestly. And that's why I was like, I know someone else is going to enjoy this, because I think as long as you enjoy it, someone else is going to enjoy it. And I mean, look, you're one of our most diehard, true
Yeah,
OG fans. And I mean, you get it. It's like there's someone out there who is going to appreciate it as much as you. Like, I love those old podcasts. I love when
yeah.
the color correction is all fucked up. I love, when the autofocus is going off and on. It's like there's something to it, man. It's just great.
It's just pure fun. It's like
Exactly.
it's almost like you know what it feels like, and this is like you know if I could ideally have like just taken master control and like been like, this is what the podcast should be. It was like,
Yeah.
what I loved about it was like, it felt like you guys were just talking. It was
Yeah.
truly just like two physicists, like two physics students talking,
Yeah.
and there just so happened to be a camera on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like this authentic way of like, oh, and it's cool because it's like, there's like many people who do that style, but it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
provide this like, oh, you actually know things about science at the same time
Right.
while also just talking, and it's like not ridiculously high production value. So like
Right.
I always dreamed that the podcast would be like, there would be come to some point where you guys would have like 100 million or 100,000 subscribers or something, and you do like two a week, and like one of them a week would be like super researched, and then like one of them a week would
Ah,
just be like whatever the hell you were talking like wanted to talk about at the time. I mean, it sort of ended up being the way
I
it
love
was
that.
with the like Patreon,
Oh, right.
non-Patreon
True.
episodes. You guys ended up doing it anyway. Like, and it's funny because
Yeah.
I thought about that, and like, well, like, I don't know, probably like almost a year before you guys actually started doing it.
Hmm.
I mean, I know when I first got onto your Patreon, you guys had like literally nothing on it.
Yeah. We had old episodes that I just copy and pasted on there to make it like to keep it active somehow.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I was like, I don't know what I want to do with this. I'm just gonna keep posting the old episodes on here that already exist on YouTube just to do
yeah,
something with it.
yeah. No, it was good
But
though. It, like developed, but
yeah.
sort of leading into me asking about where you guys have gotten to at this point. A lot of your more
Yes.
recent, yeah, a lot of your more recent topics are actually no. Before I even ask, like, what are your thoughts on like what you guys have like been up to more recently?
So of course, the podcast is evolving as we put out last episode. It's a little bit sad because we're not going to be able to do the podcast as consistently, but me and Juan are going to try to do something, to keep the content going somehow. Not sure exactly what we're going to do, but what was the question again exactly?
Just
So I
like
can make sure to answer it.
what honestly open ended. Like, what are you thinking about like how things have been in the more recently? Like, it doesn't have to be like in the past couple weeks because I know now you're in this like
Yeah,
the new state of RIP Eigenbros, but like even
right.
before that.
Um, so I think it's been okay. I think we've been a little bit stagnant, um, but that's not really so bad. It's still like it's still fun. Um, I look forward to the weekend every time just to do the podcast. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a chore to me ever. Of course, the thing that you're saying that you love about the podcast where it was like fast and loose, and I love that feeling too. I kind of have a little bit of annoyance with researching new topics every week
Yeah.
because it's hard to be able to. But the thing is, it helps me progress. I think so.
Hmm.
The podcasts, when they're well researched, they can be nice and informative, and it's good for viewers who are looking for physics content specifically, right?
Yeah.
It's not so good if the research topics are not well formulated and it's not well structured out.
Hmm.
So that's a struggle that me and Juan have always had from the beginning is our organization skills, right? So it's a constant battle of trying to figure out how to organize the podcast in a well organized way, but also keeping it loose and natural and not overly what would you say, not overly scripted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No,
we tried writing scripts for the podcast and it was fucking horrible.
yeah, I will say I will go on record as saying some of those were some of the worst episodes. Like
Yeah, I
far
hated
worse
them.
than the like no audio quality, like
Exactly. Because it's just
it
not natural. It's like that's not a podcast. It's
it
just
gets the life
stupid.
gets sucked out of it. It's like,
Yeah.
but no, I think it's interesting though. Like you're saying, it's actually kind of leading me into like a question that I actually had. So you were already like on top of what I was thinking. But
Sweet.
like I was just sort of wondering like how do you? I think it's something that some people will appreciate. Like, how did you go about learning topics for like in a
Oh,
week to talk about it? That's something like, like I'm seeing like
yeah.
you guys are talking about like these topics in theoretical physics, or you're talking about uh
Hmm.
like somebody's theory that you've never touched before
Right.
in any rigorous way before. I don't know how long before you're doing it. Like, are you doing it in a week? Do you have it like a
Right.
month in advance? Like, how does that go about?
Right. It's kind of ambitious, kind of cocky in some sense
Yeah,
to
that's what
think
I
we can
think.
even do
But
that.
often I'm
Right.
pretty impressed by how it comes out, because I'm like,
Oh, good. We
well, because
appreciate it, man.
you have this like ability to like say what you know and not say what and say what you don't know in such a way that
Right.
it feels like the audience gets to join you on the learning journey where you are at this point in understanding this topic.
Right. Right. So that was kind of the important thing to do. That a lot of these science podcasts. Actually just got done with we just got done with another live stream, and we kind of talked about this, where it's like a lot of physics podcasts and science podcasts in general, or just not even podcasts, I'm just talking science content, I should say. Like, it feels like everybody just already knows everything, and everything is so well thought out, and all the information is completely there. You don't know how they got to these thoughts or processes. And I
Yeah.
was kind of tired of seeing that kind of stuff, and I always had this thought in my mind when I was just starting out and younger. I'm just like, how the fuck do people actually think through some of these problems? Like, it's like they come up with these amazing answers, but you don't see any of the work behind how they did
Yeah.
it. And that's kind of one of the opportunities that the podcast gave, where it was like a challenge for me to try to study as much as I could. So I would usually take about 2 to 3 days to study. So I would just kind of look at topics from whatever I was tweeting about that week, hopefully not any politics. If it was just about whatever I saw in science. In the early days, I was really focused on factual content on Twitter, so I got a lot of topics that way.
Yeah.
Um, but then also I would see things on my feed, or I would, you know, me and Juan would talk about something, or we would see something, or you guys, on Discord, you guys would bring us a topic or something, and I would just try to collect whatever seemed interesting to me. Or Quantum Magazine was a big inspiration for me a lot of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I would just try to see a topic that I liked, and then I would spend about 2 to 3 days studying as much as I could on that topic, and I would not write anything down really. So sometimes I would take notes on the PC, you know,
Mm-hmm.
very brief notes, and I would make it like an outline style. So I would try to do it in the sense of like getting the meat of what the thing is. And I would ask questions. I would say, like, what is this? Why do I care? You know, why would anybody else care? What's the most relevant pieces? And I would try to distill down topics to the most interesting pieces that I possibly could to convey in a podcast. And then after that, I would scrap the notes usually. Sometimes we pull them up just for reference. And then I would try to riff on that topic just as the episode happened. So everything would have to be fresh in my mind. So it's all fresh information.
Yeah.
And I would just try to convey whatever the topic was right before the podcast, basically. And it was just a challenge to try to explain something as simply as possible. And it'd have to be simple, because if it wasn't, then I wouldn't even remember what it was, right? So that's kind of the beauty of it, where
Yeah.
if I
Check.
didn't know what the hell I was talking about, then I just couldn't talk about it.
Huh.
Um, so it was kind of a weird challenge to try to not write down as much as I could, and to try to study as much as I could, just front load as much information before the podcast, and just regurgitate as much as I could as the podcast happened. The hardest thing about doing that, though, would be actually organizing that information during the podcast. So I would have to try to keep a structure of a narrative in my mind before actually doing the podcast, which was the hardest part. So, because I didn't know what I was going to talk about, right? So a lot of times, what I would do with me and Juan, what we would do, we would say like the structure. So I would try to keep it like an essay, like a book, and I would say, okay, Juan, we're going to discuss this in the beginning. I'm going to try to discuss this in the middle, and then we're going to end with this. And that
Yeah.
would be the whole rubric. So, like, let's say if it's like quantum field theory, I would say, okay, I want to talk about what is quantum field theory. I want to talk in the middle as um, what problems can you solve using quantum field theory, and then at the end we can get to like I don't know the current state of where quantum field theory is at, and
Yeah.
that would be it. That would be the outline. It'd be literally we would just say that right before we record,
Yeah.
and then I would try to somehow piece that in together. And then sometimes we would have videos, which would be prepared, but they would be like videos that we knew would be good to show sometimes, and we would throw them in to certain sections. So we would say like, okay, I want to put a video here in the middle, a video here in the end, and let's use these two videos. And then we
Yeah.
would just work from there, man. It was very fast and loose, even now.
No, I love that's super interesting. It's sort of this is weird, but this reminds me of how it is whenever I go and do stand up and I'm doing new jokes.
Oh yeah, I could
Like
see that.
new jokes and stand up, like I've come to learn a little bit that it's a terrible idea to do all new jokes, but
Right, you got to give
but
some people some laughs.
yeah, or like something something at least you can bomb completely, but at least something you've got
Right,
down that you think is gonna work. But like
right.
you get up on stage and you're trying to tell some new jokes. It's like before I do it, I try to tell myself the jokes in my head, and
Yeah,
then I just have like an order of like these are the joke. These are like this is the way the progression of the bit is supposed to go, and
right,
then
right.
just try to wing it while I'm doing it. Which I don't know if that's actually the way I should do that, but I don't
I
I
think you
don't
should just do whatever it comes natural, man. That's another thing that I think makes good content is just do whatever the hell comes natural to you, because I think that is ultimately what you're going to enjoy. And
Mhm.
and actually, some people might think this is narcissistic, but I watch every single one of our podcasts. Like I watch them literally the day that they come out, because I want to see, okay, what can we do better? Like, do I actually enjoy watching this? And I know if I fall asleep, I know it's a shit podcast. But if I don't fall asleep, then I'm like, okay, this was actually a good one.
It's a good one. I'm impressed that you can do that. I literally so I often edit like the videos I make or something like that, or try to listen
Hmm.
back to like this being the third time I've ever done this, but I'll try to listen back to it, and I
I get
hate everything I've ever done
it.
ever.
I get it. I get it.
I like it literally makes me want to throw it. Like it's disgusting. I'm revolted by it. It's like
Well, it probably helps that I have Juan too, because I can just, if I don't want to listen myself, I can kind of tune in more to Juan. Because sometimes when I rewatch a podcast, I hear so many more interesting things that Juan says that I kind of glossed over. And I think it's
Mhm.
because I'm in the mindset of just trying to keep the whole structure together. I won't even sometimes hear what Juan says.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that makes me remember, like, oh, I need to pay attention to what the fuck is Juan is saying sometimes. So it's like it's a feedback loop of like trying to correct yourself, and it's really useful to do that, I think. So you should watch your content. I think it really helps to improve, because how else were you going to improve if you don't even know what your mistakes are?
No, it's true. I agree. I mean, who else is your like? No one can be a better critic of what you've done and what you were
Right.
aiming to achieve when you've done it than yourself. Like, other
Exactly.
people can enjoy it or not enjoy it, but they don't really know what you were trying to go for
Right.
exactly, other than
And they may
yourself.
not even know why they enjoyed it or why they didn't. And you
Yeah,
would only know that. So you have to be the one leading that change if it needs to change.
yeah. No, I mean, it's really interesting. That's sort of. I mean, that leads to like another topic of you know maybe just the general space of like people who do like science content or like quote unquote like public intellectuals and in the that sort of sphere. Like,
Yes.
do you think that like how do you feel about how people are going about doing that? And maybe you have like some examples of people who are doing it really well, or people who aren't doing it well, or maybe you think no one's doing it well, and you should have 3 million followers and everyone should be listening to
Well,
you.
I certainly don't think we should have 3 million followers. I kind of like that we don't, honestly, because I think sometimes you become beholden to your audience, and the bigger your audience, it usually means that you kind of, I don't know, it makes it less, it makes it harder to do risky things or
Do
try
do you
risky
think
things.
Do you think? Oh, here's this never reoccurring topic, but do you think Lex
Yeah.
Friedman is beholden to his audience? I think not somehow.
I think not somehow too, and I
I
think maybe it's
think
because it's the physics or this the science niche,
yeah, like I think
which is
that
kind of interesting.
I would
So
generally agree with you that like
yeah,
when people get a bigger following, they sort of like they lose the risk factor. They sort of
mhm,
like their audience pinholes them, or
yeah,
they think their audience won't like something, so they pinhole themselves
right,
into not talking about certain topics. Whereas some people are just capable of being like, screw it, I don't care who's listening. Like
right.
I'm just gonna do what I think is interesting, no matter what.
Well, I think with podcasting, it's really nice because it's kind of hard to pigeonhole yourself in podcasting because they are so long. It's impossible to not be yourself. So
Yeah,
it's like it's nice when the format is kind of constructed in such a way where you are going to fuck up, say wrong things, mess up facts and whatever, to where this is really just your most genuine self by default. And I think that's why Lex Friedman might have been able to get away with that, you know, or that's why Lex Friedman might not be beholden to his audience because he has to be himself in the podcast. His podcasts are 3 hours long. There's no
yeah,
other way to really do that. And it's like Joe Rogan, he's been doing the same stuff for a decade now, probably or more. Um, so I think that is a nice thing about podcasting that it lends itself to kind of making people be more genuine. Um, but I guess in terms of like if you're talking like the big content creators like Veritasium or Three Blue One Brown or someone like that, I think they may have more of a risk of getting pigeonholed. Um,
yeah,
because Veritasium, like for example, I mean he makes such amazing videos, right? Like he always has to kind of compete with that standard, and his standard is just so ridiculously high now. It's like I could see him. I could see if I was in his position, I would be much more like, damn, should I even put this out? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure he goes through his mind more of like cutting away content because his videos are such banger after banger and they're so well crafted that he has to really curate that quality at a high level.
yeah.
Which
It's
I
his
think
video.
the podcast we don't have to do. Like me and Juan could do a shit podcast, and it's like, it was fine. We'll do another one next week.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, it's because it's like the tightness of the content is like can in some ways be inhibiting by the fact that it is so like
Yeah,
wonderfully tight. But I think for a lot of those people, like maybe they just have like they've also internally like they're too afraid because I think that the beauty of like content and like say so a platform like YouTube is like, hey, you do this like amazing like one style of video and you're like, screw it, I don't want to do this any or
hmm
maybe I still want to do it, but I want to do something else too. Like, you got a second channel, or like, or you could just like
not
post it on
even.
the same channel. Yeah,
Yeah, why not?
like you could
I
do
agree.
both.
I
It's
mean, I think you should be able to do whatever you want. Like with YouTube, I mean, and actually the content model these days to me just seems more and more of just put out content. Like people, if they like you, they're going to enjoy your stuff.
yeah,
Like, and you never know. That's another thing is you just never know what's going to hit. Like you can make the dumbest post, the dumbest fucking video. Like this has happened to me numerous times on Twitter. I still am always shocked by it sometimes. Like with Twitter, some of my biggest tweets will just be the shit that I just wake up real quick, uh, just think of something for 1 minute, and then just throw it up there, and then it's just doing crazy numbers. I'm just like,
yeah,
wow, I just never would have predicted that. And then the things that I'll like really curate and think lots of time, they'll have like 2 likes. So it's just like you just don't know what's going to hit. And a lot of times with content and the YouTube game, the biggest factors, if you really want to have some type of metric for success, it's about timing. Timing is fucking everything in this business. I think of content
yeah.
creation.
I resent
Uh,
that. I
I
resent
know.
that
I hear you.
idea.
I
I
get that.
it's like the fact that I don't know. Maybe it's like it's definitely some like scientist being unnecessarily like staunch on an opinion kind of thing, but like I didn't go in like, I ran away from the idea that I needed to network and stuff like, and then you realize it's
Right.
like you have no choice. But like one of the things I ran away from was like the idea that like, and I still sort of do run away from it.
Mhm.
I definitely still do. The idea that you need to like do the thing that people want you to do in a moment. Like, and I know that's
Well,
how it
that's not
works.
exactly what I mean. That's not exactly what I mean. So I can give you an example. Our Eric Weinstein podcast is probably our most successful podcast on the channel, I think, even still, like 20,000 views or something. And I was, I was talking with Eric for months. I was hanging out in the Portal Discord, talking to people there, um, just in that space of the Eric Weinstein world for months and months. But the thing was, it wasn't a trend, right? Like Eric on YouTube was not a trend. It's just that I was so in deep in that world. I knew what was relevant to people at that time. I knew Eric was coming out with a paper on geometric unity. So,
Mm,
and I was already studying stuff with geometric unity for that time for months, looking it over and just getting a sense and an idea for it. And I was like, you know what? We should make a podcast on this. And it was like a week after he came out with the paper. And that's timing.
yeah.
But none of that could have been really planned. Like it was all working up to that just from being so immersed in that world. So I was still doing the things that I liked and the things I was interested in, but it's
Mm.
just being able to capitalize on those opportunities at the right time.
That sort of reminds me of that like cliche phrase of like, you know, um, people say like, success is luck, and then someone will the phrase is something along the lines of hard work is like being prepared for when so that when luck strikes
Yeah,
you, like you don't miss, or like
exactly.
you're right there ready for it. So I mean that's a cool example. Like
Right.
I didn't know that that's how that came about, but I mean it was like you're right in the fact that like I remember when you guys put that one out, like I was like super intrigued about it as someone who was like
Right.
just generally aware of the stuff that Eric was talking about, and like seeing that he kind of like he really ramped up his like social media use, and he was sort of like
Right.
starting to do his like his little podcast run again, and
Right.
he was getting
It
on
was
and
like
starting.
you got to take the pH of the zeitgeist, if you will, of what is going on at the time. And it's like
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's like the relevancy plus the timing is just like so huge. But if
Hmm.
you're in that world already, it's not hard to do that. You just have to. It's like you get a intuition for it after a certain while. You know what is kind of interesting and what the content is going to be that gets you up there. Like I knew that Eric Weinstein podcast. I knew that one was going to be good.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to hit exactly like that, but I knew it was going to get a lot of eyes because I knew that was just like that was the pH of our YouTube space at the time. Like everybody was interested in that, so I knew it was going to hit.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you can predict those things, but other times you can't. You know.
Yeah. But I mean, you're right in that, like, it took you knowing that it's honestly sometimes, and it sounds a little weird, but like maybe a gift or a skill of getting high quality content, or content that people are attracted to, is giving people what they want before they even when they don't even know that's what
Right.
they want. Like I
Exactly.
think a lot of people wouldn't have been like, no, yeah, what I want to know right now is what, like, your analysis of like Eric Weinstein's
Right.
geometric unity theory. But like when it came out, it was like, hold up, like here's, you
Yeah.
know we've got Eric talking about it, but it's like, how reliable is it that you can listen to what he's saying because it's his theory, and he's also talking, like when he goes on like a platform like Joe Rogan, and you're like, I mean,
Hmm.
he's not going to say anything mathematical or like
Technical.
technical in
Right.
there, and you know that you're not, and it would be bad if he did even. But
Exactly.
like, but it's like that's not what I want. Like, as someone who does science, I'm like, I'm not here to like listen to him explain analogies to
Right.
Joe. Like Joe isn't even going to know what questions to ask. Like it's not going to be particularly
Right.
useful to me. I'd have better questions to ask.
Right.
And
Right.
it's like, but then it's like, oh, someone else has done the work for me of
Yes.
explain this topic to me. but also not, as you were saying earlier, not like explain it in this way. It's like where they're crystal clear on everything,
Right.
where they already know it all, where it's like, and then you guys, you furthered on it, you brought Tim in to like talk more about it, and
Exactly.
it became
Exactly.
like this like interesting dialogue about this like piece of work, which is really interesting.
Right. Right. So that was a great little saga for the Eigenbros where we kind of, I think, we really nailed it on that end. You know, and I mean, that's just being interested in that world. It's like you just do whatever you're interested in. I think it all comes naturally. You just have to be able to seize those opportunities, like you said.
Yeah. So it reminds, I don't know if you know what, do you know what Fermat's library is? Um,
I do not.
so Fermat's library, I just like uh heard about it pretty recently. Is this like this website that was made by these two Portuguese, like one's a mathematician and the other is a physicist, PhDs, and it's basically a topic. It's a subject for annotating papers. Like it's a website where you can annotate papers, and they like do a thing where I think you'd be interested in it, where they annotate papers, basically trying to like
Okay.
their point of it is like, there's all these papers, and there's some of these like really important papers, and like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are reading them, and yet we all have to do the learning discovery on our own, like of the difficult aspects of it, which it would be
Mm,
like, it would make sense if you could incorporate the fact that other people have learned this and have figured out interesting ways to explain this, because papers aren't, they're not, the goal of a paper is not always actually to be the most explanatory as possible, because there's like word limits on writing a paper. There's like,
yeah.
it's not, the goal is to get the information out as concisely as possible to the other
Right.
people in the field who also understand the topic, not explain it to
Right.
everyone. I
Right.
say this like, I think that this the application is pretty interesting and useful, because you get to interact with, or you get to read what other people who may be experts in the field, like how they would explain the paper or how they would elaborate on
Mm,
it or give context or history to it. And I think that's really interesting. But I think in a lot of ways, you guys actually kind of did that in a video audio podcast format. Like
hmm.
that whole series of things was like an annotation, was like one
Interesting.
group's annotation of Eric's paper. It's like, oh, this
Right.
is you guys trying to annotate it and explain it, and then you bring on someone else who has their own annotation and explanation, and it
Right.
gives people many perspectives through which to read the work.
Right. Right. That's a great way to put it, man. And I think that's what we strive to do. Really, it's like we're just a weird kind of new, I would say, voice to be heard on something that people may find interesting, but they're just like, what more perspectives can I get on something from someone else who you know would be interested in this? It's like, yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and that's something we've always kind of tried to do. It's like, what would real physicists think about, or let's say physics graduate students, what would they think about this alien shit out here? Like,
Yeah,
but actually talking in a real physics framework, what would that sound like? So that's why that's kind of the niche we feel, I think, because
yeah,
we have the knowledge, we have the credentials. It's like, now, what would somebody who actually has no real stake in the game? Like, I don't have sponsors, I don't have people I'm trying to impress here. It's like we've got 5,000 followers or 5,000 subscribers. It's like, it's kind of interesting. Like, what would they think? So
yeah.
yeah.
No, I think it's pretty cool and really interesting. I guess maybe this leads me to one of my last questions, but like, do you think that there's how do I say this? Do you think, how important do you think conversation in this like sort of like in the niche you guys are filling is to the propelling of science, in sort of the way of the fact that there seems to be this growing disconnect between like science as it's done, and like people who are scientists, and then like the average person. And I think
Right.
I think one of the main things we've now come out of, or at least for me, that I feel like a lot of people in my area have understood from climate change, and then now has been like added on maybe from uh COVID and all, is
Hmm.
the idea that you know most people don't know anything about science, like real, and
Right.
it's not there's anything wrong with that. It's just like
No.
it's almost dangerous. It's just scary, like how little they know and how poor scientists can be at trying to explain those things. So, do you think that there's like how important? Or I mean, I guess I sort of said how important I think it is, but do you think it's important for people to be like sort of doing this sort of role of science explanation and science conversation?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, that is one of the reasons why I, do this podcast in the way that we do. It's like this is something that I've always wanted. So it's like, well, no one else is doing this, so I'm just going to do it, right? Of course, we got Lex Friedman, but I think we started ours maybe around the same time as Lex or before. I'm
Yeah,
not even sure.
maybe before, maybe
Um,
before.
yeah, I can't even remember. But um, yeah, I think there is this disconnect between science and the public, man. And it's not the fault of the public, it's the fault of the scientists, in my opinion. Scientists give themselves this untouchable kind of air where they don't want to ever be wrong, and they have such egos tied to their research and whatnot. And this authoritarian approach, a lot of times, ironically,
Yeah,
that it's like people don't know what to believe. So me and Juan try to fill this kind of mid gap, this middle area where we're like, guys, we're students or ex students. We've got all the credentials. We can talk with the best of them, um, but we're also just like you. Like we
yeah.
like memes. We watch Rick and Morty. You know, we fucking listen to rap music. It's like we're just normal ass dudes who have the credentials, and we're kind of trying to bring the information back from the gods down to you guys. Like
Yeah,
we're this middle point, trying to show you guys what's real.
yeah,
Because so many things in institutions and high levels are just such bullshit. You know what I mean? And it's like um, there's so many ways to obfuscate the truth, and people have agendas and ideologies. It's like me and Juan just want to be that kind of nexus point where you can just have two guys that you can rely on for the real, what's going on. It's
yeah.
like
No,
we try to do what we can to really bring that, that truth, or I don't know how to say it. Like we just try to give you guys as straight up of an answer as we know, right? And I think that's very important. I think, and I'm happy with what we've done so far. And I mean, I hope people will continue to utilize this kind of approach. And I think we hopefully will inspire more people to try to take this role. Like, like you even are doing this. And, we got people in the page, other people in the Patreon, like Kristaps and, you know, others. Like, I hope I hope we can inspire people to kind of take this role and to kind of not be afraid to be your true selves, and not have to always have such cleaned up information. you know
yeah,
just trying to tell people what you know and what you don't know, and you guys make of the information what you will, but we're just trying to give you guys the tools and the understanding to make your own conclusions.
yeah. While also making it entertaining, and as a
Right,
self
right.
as a self-proclaimed man of the people, I deeply appreciate that. I think it's dope. Like the
Thank you,
podcast
man.
is it's been super fun, like the stuff you guys put out. So I guess
We
and I
appreciate
think
it,
I
man.
think I think that people, I mean, it's not just me saying this. Obviously, you got like a group of listeners now that I think hopefully will, even if the podcast changes, you'll keep some amount of listeners, and hopefully it'll come back in a certain way and maybe and grow. So yeah,
I
it's been
appreciate it.
cool. Thanks for coming on. We're gonna probably do this again sometime. I got more questions
Yes,
to
man.
ask you eventually. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to see where the trajectory takes us. Juan's going to be millionaire Juan over here, lining his pockets with cash. So hopefully the money won't change him.
Yeah, I've taken a hard look at that man, and I feel as though he's gonna sell out real quick. Next thing you know, you're gonna see him giving some like just candy wrapped statements about how we need to listen to the authorities all the time, and they've never been wrong, and I love both sides actually, and there's nothing wrong with anything. Um,
No, we can't
so
let Juan.
no,
We can't let them get to Juan.
no. If Juan was to sell out, I would fully expect the hard hitting uh destruction video to like just destroy his career and force him to come back to Earth.
Well, Juan's gonna have to put that money to the Eigenbros iteration too.
Exactly.
But yeah, man,
Cool. Okay,
I
man.
greatly appreciate you having me on, man.
Thank you. It's been cool, man.
And anybody listening to this, if you don't know who the fuck we are by now, subscribe to the goddamn channel. We're still keeping it around. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Eigenbros everywhere, except for TikTok. Eigenbros too. I fucked up. But yeah, guys.
Yeah, man. Subscribe to the Eigenbros. He's at this point. It's
Yes,
in your genetic code has like, share, comment, and subscribe. Like it's part of
it's
your
so true,
DNA.
man. It's part of my DNA.
Enjoy it, people. Check out the Eigenbros.
Indeed.
Cool. Wavy.